my clock rate.
There
Yeah,
we
there
go.
we go.
Here we go. Okay, let me click that.
Hi, Bernie.
Morning.
Hi, Bernie. You had weather out there, huh? Top stuff.
Yeah, we've had a bit of snow.
Uh-huh.
No more than a couple inches at a time. And it's supposed to warm up starting
Oh.
today.
Oh,
Colorado, that's nothing, right?
And we're supposed to cool down. You're supposed to warm up, we're gonna cool down.
oh.
Oh, I can take my pill now. I couldn't take it but 2 hours after I ate, and now it's
Hey, your nose is looking better.
Yes, it is.
yes, it does.
The
Yeah.
stitches are starting to fall out, and I meet with the specialist in another week. So
Should be all better by then.
I doubt it.
Oh, it takes about 6 weeks for the skin graft. That's a
I
skin
know, I
graft.
know.
Clamp and a skin graft. Takes about 6 weeks for that all to heal in.
It's been challenging 3 weeks.
Yeah,
Oh,
you got
okay.
another 3 weeks to go, and it'll be
Did you
good.
have to keep it dry and all?
No, I have to keep it moist with Vaseline.
Okay.
Right.
Did you have Mohs surgery?
I did. You don't want to hear the
I've been there, I know.
my experience.
Well, it's hard on your nose. There's so little
Not
skin.
only that, it was hard on my mental.
Oh, you're right.
You get there at 8 o'clock, or you leave here at 8 o'clock to go to Scottsdale because I couldn't get an appointment until March here in Surprise. So I went to Scottsdale. My appointment was at 9. I left here at 8 so I could get there in time. And then they told me I'd be there probably all day, which
Yeah.
I was. And then you don't want to hear the rest.
I've been in the office, waiting room when people come out and then they go back in and they come back.
That's right. That's
They do
right.
it because it's layer by layer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
I know my brother-in-law had it done, and it looked like a major hole in his nose when he got done.
Well, I had black eye. Well, I think you guys saw it. Black eyes here. It's still swollen.
Well, you had the Band-Aid on the last time.
Yeah, well,
But it
Yeah.
looks like it's healing very nicely, though.
it's doing
It's,
well. It's doing good. All right, it's 11:02, so let's get started.
One final thing about your nose. It doesn't look like Carol Malden's.
Oh, my goodness. Oh,
All right.
You wanted a Carol Malden nose,
I understand.
no. He
Let's
doesn't
start
want
with
that.
Let's start with the blessing real quick, and then we can turn it over to Rabbi. Together, Baruch
Baruch atah
Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav,
Tivanu
v'tzivanu b'zo b'nei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the world, who has sanctified us with your commandments
and
and
commanded us
commanded us to engage in the words of Torah. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Rabbi, it's all yours. We're talking about Jacob's death and the blessings
And his sons.
and his
Yes, so
sons.
Jacob is very sick and he has a lot of children and they come and they want to say goodbye. And he gives them a blessing each or an evaluation. And I guess there's nothing like impending death to make people a little more honest. I guess sometimes. Other times you may not want to be honest, right? You're dying. This may not be the time to criticize. So it's kind of, what do you do? Do you tell your children what you really think? Or do you just say, it was nice. I love you all. What?
So it's nice knowing you.
Yeah. And just say, just keep everything positive. So it's, I had a terrible life. I was miserable. Is this something you want to tell your children as you die? You
No,
can't do anything about it. Wait,
No,
you let them have a happy memory of you wishing them well for the future of their lives, and leave out the criticism, because you don't want them to remembering you at the last moment with a sense of bitterness or acrimony. It's bad news all around.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the part they'll remember.
That's
Right.
right.
You say good things too, but the
Yes.
critical things that you say to them, I think that's the part that actually stays with you.
With them much
absolutely.
more.
Yes.
Tell them you're proud of them, their accomplishments, and you wish them and their children the best that life can offer them, and they will remember you fondly for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
all right.
And
But
don't
if,
talk about your
but
will.
if you want to be honest, you've held in a lot of stuff, you're dying, you don't want to just say all these trivialities and die. You want to be honest.
This is
Yes,
There's a
Marcia,
time for honesty.
Marcia.
This is interesting. The women are saying one thing, and I agree with you ladies, and the men are now saying honesty. Is this a father-mother situation where,
Oh, well, it's interesting. Today we have 4 men, 4 women.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so what do you think,
As
Bernie?
our group gets smaller, where the male representation percentage-wise grows larger.
Pam's out of
So,
town, and I don't know who else.
Yes.
yeah,
Bernie,
I
what
mean,
do you
it's
think?
interesting. There's a gender gap here. Bernie.
He's not.
I find it interesting that in one generation, Jacob seems to have forgotten that the blessing and the birthright for the firstborn, he chooses out the firstborn and selects someone else to be his favorite. He doesn't seem to remember all the trouble that was caused because of that stolen birthright.
Mhm.
And the trouble that Simeon and his brother created when the sister was violated.
Yes.
So he doesn't remember a lot of things, or he's ignoring them. Either way, but he doesn't come off as totally positive by any means, right? I mean, he's definitely saying stuff that's critical. All right, Richard. So, what is your policy on this?
Well, again, this is the Bible, and it's trying to teach us lessons. And I think it's from what I can tell is that he's brutally honest with his sons, his evaluations of them, so that maybe they'll be better citizens because they're going to be the leaders of Israel. Basically, they're going to be the tribal leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel. So he has to give an honest evaluation of them all, what their strengths and weaknesses are.
So
Mostly
brutally honest,
pardon?
brutally honest.
Oh yeah, he's brutally honest. Yeah, he's not he's his favorite Joseph. He's saying, "Hey, you're a wild ass."
Mhm.
I'm not quite sure what that means. Maybe it means he's impetuous, but he certainly wasn't impetuous when he is the as the second in command. He seems to be a very astute observer of human nature and ability to control the situation. Even his brothers, he was able to control. In the last chapter, when he was reconciled with his brothers, he was getting even with him a little bit by making it hard on him, and then he reconciled with him.
Okay, so that's good. Marcia?
Um, he could have said the same thing, not nice, more nicely. He could have been more,
Diplomatic.
diplomatic. He could have corrected them in a way that wasn't so nasty. You know, I mean, it really, you can say, he could have said, perhaps you should behave this way or that way, it's, in your actions, instead of saying, just calling them names. Maybe he was in a lot of pain. What do we know? So,
Right, I mean, I think dying is very different today. They give morphine to almost everybody. In those days, a lot of people were in great pain and they were very hyper alert.
right.
Today, people would, because of the morphine, they just sleep. And so I think that it's good that, we don't suffer as much when we're dying, although we still suffer much more than dogs. But on the other hand, we don't have this painful end that would make us agitated and tend to bring out a lot of truths. So I think in those days, people tended to be more honest. They're in terrible pain, they're frightened, they're agitated. There was no morphine to help them. And so this produced a desire to talk very aggressively and bluntly and feeling like there's a punishment coming. So I don't know. Good morning, Natalie.
Hi.
We're
Comment,
just talking about how we would respond to dying and whether we would be truthful or not about our own lives, about the people around us. How Evelyn was like, no, this is the time to just say nice things. And I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying this is the time to be maybe not brutally honest, like Richard said, but honest. Not brutally, but directly honest. Minya, comments?
I'm looking at the list on page 123, where it says Jacob's sons and leadership. So he was really looking for which of his sons would be good leaders. He wasn't really talking about their personal lives.
Oh, okay. So we never mind that you divorced that nice girl for no reason. We're talking about whether you can lead the children of Israel, that this is a communal, but and therefore is that what Jacob was worried about?
Well, he wanted somebody who could be a leader. I think that was his primary concern.
Mhm. So he's not here doing a general evaluation of them.
Right.
Okay. Okay, Evelyn.
Well, I was just thinking in terms of leaders, which we look for too. Do we look for their own personal morality, or would you look for their ability to lead the entire nation in a positive, forward-looking way? Their personal morals or their personalities perhaps take second place to what their leadership qualities are. And if you're considering leading a large group of people towards a specific goal, then those qualities seem to be more paramount than one's personal peccadillos, as they call them. Whether he's got 2 wives or 3 wives, or he divorced them, or whatever hanky-panky went on, how relevant is that in terms of the man's leadership quality to take a large group and move forward in a positive way? And in this case, choosing Judah or mentioning Judah's qualities as opposed to the other sons. So,
I guess it depends what you're trying to accomplish, right?
yeah.
I mean, if you're dying, are you just trying to get stuff off of your chest? Or are you trying to guide them for when you're not there in terms of what they're going to do in their personal lives? Are you trying to make sure that what happens to the children of Israel is as good as possible? I mean, there's at least 3 goals that you could have that are completely different. And I guess what you're trying to accomplish is the question. Natalie.
Yeah. he didn't have an ongoing relationship with them. So when he comes out with these descriptions, which are tough, for them to hear, when we say something to someone, it depends on who the source is, and what your relationship was and what past experiences have been, whether you take it in an insulting way, whether you question it, whether you think about it, and what the outcome is. So I don't know how effective that was.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, that's the question is, he definitely, says some stuff that's pretty blunt. But is the point, well, if is the point is just to get it off his chest, then one would presume it was very effective. He said his piece in front of them. They were embarrassed or humiliated or
But I'm talking not effective for him, effective for the sons going forward. If he's just doing it to find a leader, we understand. But if he's doing it, maybe both, for their benefit moving forward in their lives, then I don't know, how effective it would be.
Right.
Yeah.
Lynn.
Rabbi, Evelyn's got her hand up.
When you stop and think, what was his relationship all of those years with his sons, with their undesirable traits? At that point, did he do anything to temper these traits or redirect them? It seems to me that he let them loose and they did what they did. And at the end of his life, he's berating them for these traits that they have. There's no indication whether he had ever tried to ameliorate all of these conditions as such. And so, I mean, if he let him run rampant and then when he's dying, he says, you're no good and you're no good and you're this and you're that, it's ineffective and hurtful. And so let's just say there's a lack of information. We don't have the full picture. And so we're criticizing when we really don't know exactly, precisely what happened. It's all speculative.
But you seem pretty accurate in that he doesn't seem to have been a very hands-on.
That's right. He was not an effective patriarch in any sense.
Well,
he ruled the roost, but
he's a patriarch in a broad sense, in that he's the big boss, but he's not an active father who is guiding these kids, on a weekly basis. He basically, as you said, let them loose. And now at the end of his life, he's, chastising them for having been wild and done whatever they wanted to. But there was nobody there guiding them day by day except their mothers. And there was such competition, the mothers were pushing, anything that would get their sons in front of the camera, basically. Bernie.
Yeah, I wonder whether he was of sound mind at this point, because just looking at how he describes Joseph, he's describing Joseph as he was as a 17-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if all this stuff that he chews the other kids out about happened years ago rather than now, because remember that they went to Egypt to get food for their family. They were acting as responsible citizens, even though they were not so nice guys earlier on.
All right, so you get a reputation, and it's very hard to change that reputation, even if you've changed. So their own father is treating them like that they were when they were 18, even though they're now 40. The children may have changed a lot, but the father sees them the old way.
Right.
What are you going to do? You say, but Dad, that was 25 years ago. I've changed.
And Dad says, don't confuse me with facts. My mind is made up.
Yeah.
He's dying. It's not the time to fill him in on what's happened the last 25 years. It's too late. He doesn't have much energy. He just wants to say his piece and he's going to die. So whose fault is that? I mean, people are immature when they're young. It's part of being young. You're immature. You don't have perspective. That what is the expression? Youth is wasted on the young.
Young, that's right.
My point is that Jacob may have lost a good bit of his mental faculties, and he's living back 40 years ago.
Okay, so he's in an Alzheimer's unit, even worse. So he's not just, thinking that they're the way they were 25 years ago, not just because he didn't follow what they were doing, but because he can't follow what he's doing. He's got a little dementia. I mean, my God, what kind of relationship is this? This is, everybody must be so frustrated. It's what a family. And the four wives, and the only wife he loves is the one that dies, and the only children he cares about is they're lost or dead. The father's so bitter and so angry, and yet there's so many wives and children running around, but he only wants the ones that aren't there.
Why?
Yes, Natalie.
Yeah. Why do they have this worry that if we tell our father, previous to today, if we tell our father, what's happening and all, it's going to break his heart? Why did there must have been some kind of relationship somewhere along the way.
Right? Anybody want to answer that? Shirley? You think the sons love their father?
Yeah.
You don't think that, Shirley, you don't think the
You
sons
gotta
love their
unmute,
father?
Shirley.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I think they were taking advantage of him in any way that they could.
Aha, so this is the rich father. He's distant. They don't really care about him because they don't think he cares about them, but he's the source of all the money.
Right.
All right. So why are they so worried it's going to break his heart if Benjamin doesn't go home?
Well, Benjamin was his favorite and his baby. And maybe he had a
Benjamin was his
different relation.
second favorite. After Joseph, Benjamin was his favorite because same mother, and Joseph's gone.
Right.
So
And
why
yet,
would they care? All right, Marcia.
and yet in that box that menu referred to, it says Benjamin, he says, lacks balance of judgment and concern for others. So he's even critical about Benjamin. So there's no pleasing him, apparently.
Well, if you're dying in great pain and you've had a frustrating life, everything you always wanted is exactly what you didn't get. What you didn't want is what you got. This is going to be the result. You're going to be very bitchy at the end. Richard?
Again, what we're doing is the people who've written this, the stories who we told, it's about our, the relationship of Jacob to his sons, to Israel, the formation of Israel. That's how I look at it. And I look at the assessment as a critical assessment of these people who are going to be the individuals who are going to be the leaders of Israel. I mean, they're going to be the 12 leaders of the tribes of Israel, which eventually, of course, will all be enslaved. And then they'll be freed and end up in Israel as the 12 tribes of Israel. So I just think it's a moral story of what how people act in general. I mean, he's going through all the goods well, actually the bads of what people can do, and telling him and warning him, basically. That's what he's doing. He's just warning him. I take these things not as a personal, individual thing, but as a story, trying to tell a story about our people.
Mhm.
I have a little different aspect, that it didn't matter if they loved him or not, they obeyed him.
All right, so it's more about obeying than loving.
Right.
All right.
And they did obey him at least to some degree.
Oh, yeah.
All right, any other comments? If not, we'll start. We're on page 122. Perek Bet, Jacob and his sons' honest evaluations, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, who'd like to read? We have 9 potential volunteers.
I'll read.
Okay, Evelyn.
Jacob and his sons, honest evaluations. Just before he was about to die, Jacob called his 12 sons to gather about his bed. His words to them are a combination of blessing, criticism, and prediction. The dying patriarch is bluntly honest in his evaluation of his sons. He tells Reuben that he is as unstable as water, accuses Simeon and Levi of lawlessness and fierce anger, and assesses Issachar as a strong-boned ass. He calls Dan a serpent. He tells Joseph that he is a wild ass, and Benjamin that he is a ravenous wolf. Why, we might ask, was Jacob so harshly critical of his sons?
Wow, wow. So imagine being called a ravenous wolf, or a strong-boned ass, or lawless, or a snake. I mean, he says some terrible things that, like Evelyn said, you want to leave your children with something positive to remember. You don't want to attack them in such vicious language. What did Richard call it? What did you say?
His assessment of the people who would lead Israel.
Was very, very, very harsh. All right, keep going. Yes, Marcia.
Do we know anything about Jacob's personality for this? Is there something that indicates to us in the, transpiring years as as he was being a king, as he was living, is there any story that I don't remember any storytelling specifically about him?
Well, Jacob and the fought with the angel. I mean, that goes back. That was the story, wasn't it?
Jacob's ladder, yeah, that story, yeah.
Well, there's 2 stories. There's Jacob's ladder, where he sees the angels going up and down, and then there's where Jacob wrestles with some strange man who turns out, at least in the Midrash, to be an angel.
Well, I'm wondering about his personality. Was he always this irascible person? Was that so they would think, well, that's the old man, he's always talked like that, and not take it very seriously or very much to heart. I mean, they would listen to what he said, but maybe not think badly of as a normal person would have said such a thing. I'm just wondering about what kind of a person he was over the
Yeah,
years.
well, there's a little bit of evidence, but it's not a lot. I mean, clearly he was distant. I mean, he was a big patriarch. He was rich. He had 4 wives, lots of children. He was very above it all. You know, he had problems with his brother. So there's lots of politics. They
could be
um, he owned the family business, which most of the sons worked in. So he controlled a lot.
Yeah.
He was kind of a patriarch in the classic sense, for good and for bad, but mostly for bad.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So
he
we as
encouraged competition among the children.
yeah.
So he didn't make an effort to treat everyone equally and to try to say, don't criticize your siblings. Bernie, and then who else wanted?
Evelyn.
There's
Bernie
also
and
some
Evelyn.
evidence that he's a bit wimpy. He let
In
his
what-
mother get him to steal the birthright. Then he let his father-in-law foist off the wrong sister without much of a protest. Basically, he said, all right, I'll work another 7 years. So there's a couple of instances where he's wimpy, not powerful.
What should he have done?
I don't know what the rules were back then, so I can't comment.
That was,
I know what I would have done.
What would you have done?
I would have said, take her back.
Kidnapped
I don't
her.
want her.
You would have said what?
I would have said, take Leah back. I don't want her. If you won't give me Rachel, then
It was too
you're
late.
not a nice person.
It was too late.
But that's what Bernie's
Oh, the
saying.
veil was still on, okay.
Yeah, but it's like if you break it, you keep it.
There was no such thing as divorce in those days, were there?
Well, all right. Richard,
Well, Evelyn didn't.
I would say, looking at his personality, he had persistence for sure, because he stayed for extra 7 years just to get Rachel, right? Even though he had Leah, and Leah gave him 10 children. Well, Leah and the two others gave 10 children. Were the 10 children all from Leah?
Apparently not.
no, how many were from Leah? Was 5?
5, Leah from 5, and then there would be then 3 from
two
two from the
from Rachel.
and then the others came from his the concubines. Were they actually married, or were they just concubines?
Well, concubines have an official status. It was like a lower form of marriage, but it was official.
Okay. Oh, okay. So he wasn't committing something bad. He was, like bedding down with unwed women. It was his concubines, his semi-wives.
Yeah.
So that was,
I'm sure Jacob would not have, what's the expression you use? Bedded down with unwed women. That would be terrible.
but that's the norm of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
We are interpreting what happened through our own eyes, our own values, and we're not exactly sure. We speculate as to what the customs and values were of the time through whatever we can glean from the literature. And so we're assessing it from the 23rd century, 22nd century. And it's just, it's speculation. I'm sorry. That's exactly what it is. As I said, your opinion is as good as mine. And so that's how we're discussing it.
Okay. Evelyn, you want to keep reading?
Sure. Modern interpreter Pinchas Pelly believes that Jacob's evaluation was meant to be helpful to them. His honesty taught them important lessons about their strengths and weaknesses. As their father, he could say things that no one else would tell them. Pelly argues that our lives often become confused and entangled for lack of a precise definition of who and what we really are. He claims that Jacob's evaluation of his sons was meant to help his children find their proper identity. Such a criticism of them, Pelly comments, would help them find their way towards the future in which they were destined to assume the roles as heads of the tribes of Israel. Pelly's psychological approach has special appeal. A parent's role is to help children understand their strengths and weaknesses. Constructive criticism builds character. It can deepen sensitivity to oneself and to others and improve one's social skills. But
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
stop. Is that all of that true? That a parent's role is to help the children understand their strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
thanks.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to point out to them where their best skills are, encourage them to follow them, and also be sensitive and critical of their failings. And everyone has failings at one point or another during their growing years. And so if a youngster starts doing something that he or she should not be doing, there's plenty in our society today that they should not be doing. I think it's up to the parents to either lay the law down and say, no, you may not do it, or encourage them and steer them in a different direction. You know, the best way to get a 2-year-old to stop having a temper tantrum is to entice them with something you know that they will enjoy or like. It's very easy to distract a 2-year-old. A 12-year-old, maybe not quite as easily, but you know, there are ways, and this is what the parenting role is as a child grows up. You change your tactics in a sense. And yes, I believe it is a parental duty to guide them to be the best possible citizen in that society so that they can continue to function in a productive way.
Bernie, do you agree with Evelyn?
Mhm.
I agree to some extent, but just visualize this. Suppose you called one of your adult children into the room and said, you know, you're a real jerk. What would that reaction be? Estrangement, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Even if you knew that you were giving away your inheritance when you said, oh, go blow smoke, Dad.
You think that's why? I mean, I run into so many people whose children have cut off from them
Yeah,
completely or almost completely,
Yes.
but in many cases, completely.
And sometimes
Children have
that's just
cut with them. They won't tell them why, or they don't have a reason why. They want nothing to do with their parents, even though they might get an inheritance. They don't care. They just refuse to. I mean, I have good friends, and the father was dying. They have 2 daughters and a son. The 2 daughters I know, they said the parents were great. The son won't have anything to do with them.
and
And
it
the
may
father
well be from a
dying,
perceived
the
slight.
the son still didn't call, not even a phone call.
yeah. I never saw that until I moved here to Arizona and started to talk to people and couldn't believe the number of families where there was all this, the separation of the parent and the child, uh, you know, adult children. I was, quite taken aback the whole thing. I couldn't understand that, you know.
Do you
Uh,
think that maybe this has to do that the child felt that at some point the parent criticized them, like Jacob is doing, and said, you know, you're a bony ass or you're a ravenous wolf, and the parent meant it, you know, in a constructive way, didn't even realize they were saying something like that, but the child just took it offensive and said, I don't want anything to do with this parent ever again. I mean, is that the most likely
I,
scenario?
I think that's one, and I bet that in many cases, you ask the child to give you a reason why this has happened, and they won't even know what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
in most of these cases, the child won't say. Now, if there is a thing and child says, you beat me up every night for many years, I have black and blue all over from that. Now that I'm an adult, I don't want anything to do with you. Don't ever call me. Then at least you have an explanation.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't think that was it.
And you could say, I beat you up because I was trying to make you tough. I thought it would be good. And the child said, well, it did, and I don't want anything to do with you. So you may disagree. You may feel the child should have understood that you felt it was for their benefit, but there's an explanation. But in most of these cases, the child doesn't tell you. And Bernie, I guess, is suggesting that one of the reasons they don't tell you is there isn't anything to say specifically. You didn't beat me, you didn't sexually abuse me, you didn't scream at me, all the time. There's nothing so obvious. It's just I don't want anything to do with you. And I don't know why, but I just don't. So I don't want to have it. So I'm going to cut off because that's how I feel. Why do I feel that way? I don't know. But it doesn't matter. I feel that way. Marcia.
Sometimes I imagine it's perceived attitude of the parent that, uh, you know, you say something to a child and they take it in a way that is hurtful for them, and you don't even mean it to be, and because sometimes the parent just has no idea where this is coming from, and so and the child can't even identify it, and it might be over time, and that mom always loved you better or something like that kind of thing. Sometimes the child feels like the other siblings are getting preferential treatment. You just don't know,
Mhm.
what's in their little brains, and sometimes they grow out of it. Sometimes years pass and then all of a sudden they realize that the parent is not such a horrible person.
Hmm.
you know
Well, look at the younger generation. The new polls show a very, 52% of those 18 to 25 think that Gazans should be allowed to murder all the Jews in Israel. And 3 out of 10 admire Osama bin Laden. That was in the papers this morning.
Where do they get these things from? No, I mean, where do these
TikTok.
no, but I mean, how valid do you really think these
Oh, these polls.
polls are?
Who knows? They ask and they answer, and who knows, is it serious? But it still doesn't seem good that the polls are showing that. It's not a good sign, but it's just a sign. It doesn't literally mean that most American young people are going to support Osama bin Laden, but it's not good. Okay, other comments, Steve? Natalie.
I think that I've seen the same thing that Marsha says. Um, we live in a very big community, and I'm shocked how many people are estranged from at least one child. And a friend of mine who moved from Long Island moved to Tucson. She's a therapist, and she has a free support group for people who are in this situation because she saw so many when she moved here. I think a lot of it, we think that we're very often very open with our kids and that they can come to us and say whatever. But it seems as they get older, and often because of a mate, they're not as open. So these things fester, and you don't even know why they're angry, because they really are not coming to you and expressing it, even if they know what it's about. So I don't know, maybe our perceptions of parenting was to have this exchange with our kids when there's something that's bothering them, or to be able to support them. But it doesn't seem that they're always that open.
So who's sadder here? The father who's dying, who's got all these children, but he doesn't seem to like any of them, or the children who's had this distant father who's never a very good father. Now his life is coming to an end. They made their best attempt to keep him from being more hurt. They acknowledged they did some stuff that was wrong, but they didn't understand how much it would hurt him. When they did, they tried to make it up to him, and yet he's still kind of obsessed with things that happened decades ago. And he really doesn't like any of them. Even the ones that were his supposed favorites, it turns out he doesn't really like them either. It's just that he
Right.
loved their mother. And how convenient, that's the one wife who died. You know, maybe if she hadn't died, he wouldn't have liked her so much, but she's dead. So it's easy to idealize her. She's
Right.
the perfect wife who's gone. But all the wives that are running around doing dishes, he doesn't have any interest in them. He's like, you know, they're just they're the ones that I got stuck with when the one that I loved died.
So why
I
do
mean,
we revere
Jacob-
him? When we say prayers, why do we hold these people in such esteem?
Yeah, all right. There we go. We're losing another one here, guys.
So Bernie knocked off, was it Rebecca? Yeah, you didn't
Yeah,
like her.
Bernie really doesn't like Rebecca, and I don't really like, Jacob or Rachel. So that's three patriarchs gone. How many left? Bernie.
Well, you remember
But don't
something.
say
These are,
anything bad about Rebecca.
no, Rebecca, I already written her off. These these are human beings and they have human characteristics. And maybe that's part of the lesson here is that even, they say even the president puts his pants on one leg at a time. And that may be the message that we're supposed to get here. But I still believe that Jacob was probably senile at this point and is dredging up old hurts.
That's terrible. So maybe they should have given him an extra large dose of morphine so he wouldn't be able to talk and he would just smile and he would sink into death peacefully and quietly without this last speech.
And
And
this
we would
whole
like
thing,
him more.
this thing doesn't
Would
ring
like him
true.
more, his children would like him more,
Yeah.
his descendants would like him more, those who spiritually rely on him would like him more.
Yeah, this whole story doesn't ring true unless he's not lucid.
And if he's not lucid, then it would have been better for it not to have happened.
Or at least not to have been written into the story.
Right. The Bible doesn't have to tell us everything that goes on. So maybe it should have happened but not been recorded. Steve Siegel.
We don't hear you.
Mute, unmute.
At 110, I don't think he really cares what he's thinking
What he's
or
saying.
what he's going to say. He's going to be blunt, he's going to be honest, and he doesn't care what the kids think,
Yeah.
the way I look at it.
Yeah, I agree. He totally doesn't care. He's dying. He's going to say what he wants. He spent a lot of years keeping his mouth shut when he wanted to say stuff. And this is really his last chance. And he doesn't want to die thinking, I didn't do what I should have done. I just kept my mouth shut. So he's going to say exactly what he wants, what he thinks.
Was
But
he
that's good.
125?
Maybe we should have shut him up. A shot with a little morphine could have done wonders. Richard, where were you when we needed you?
I was transferring from my bedroom to my kitchen so I can eat.
Ah,
No, but why
And-
weren't you there when we needed?
And was Jacob 125 and Joseph was 110 when he died?
I'm not sure.
10 was Jacob.
How much? 110?
110, yes.
Okay. I thought, yeah, I'm a little confused because I thought Joseph died 110, and I read some commentator that said he died because he wasn't as honest as Jacob. Or as good as Jacob, so something like that. So, but I'm probably mistaken. And anyway, if he's senile or not, it really doesn't matter for the story. I mean, they don't really, the story doesn't dwell on intellectual intelligence, in old age, because all our patriarchs were old and they still function very well. So, it's a story of the human race, story of, God's relationship to the human race. And Jacob was being bluntly honest with his kids, who he was somewhat remote with. Um, uh, but they still probably loved him as a son could love a father, no matter what.
So
I
that comes back to
have a relative.
Natalie's question. Why is Jacob one of the patriarchs that we, in the Amidah, every week, we say God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob.
Right.
Yeah, because he really was somebody who did some very important things, but he was a human being also. So we see his fragility and his avarice and his loves and the things he wants to do. And we see that he has tenacity. I mean, he really, he wanted Rachel, and so he waited 7 years for her. But remember, Laban, that was his uncle, if I remember right. So he actually married his first cousins.
Yeah.
And
That
that's
happens even
all
today.
bad diseases like diabetes,
Oh, really?
too much inbreeding.
Can cause diabetes?
Well, all inbreeding can amplify disorders. Like, for instance,
Yeah,
he
spaghetti.
really started in the royal families of Europe because they were very inbred. At least that's what I've read.
No.
No,
So,
it's true.
but
Okay, Natalie.
yeah,
No, I'm just commenting on what Richard's saying. My grandparents on my mother's side were first cousins, and one of the 8 children was retarded. I know that's not a political way of describing it now, but she was.
So that's why you have horns and a tail.
yeah.
I think Tay-Sachs, I think a whole bunch of those diseases not only come from Ashkenazi, but I think if there's a closer relationship,
They
it's
live in
heightened.
towns with the shtetls and they, so much the families were connected one to another,
But I had a girlfriend in college, and her older sister married her first cousin, and they eloped. The parents on both sides were very opposed, so they eloped. Plus, in Ohio, they were from Cleveland, Ohio, and it was illegal, but it was not illegal in Pennsylvania. So they eloped, they ran away, they went up across the border from Ohio to Pennsylvania where it was legal, and they got married there with no guests.
I think it's illegal in Massachusetts too, because I remember something at the town hall where I had to sign some kind of paper that
But he
somebody.
became a steel salesman, made a lot of money. They had 2 or 3 children who, as far as I knew at the time, were normal. But now that Richard says they can get diabetes later in life, so who knows? But they appeared to be normal.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve, comment?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, Evelyn, and then you can read as well.
Okay, the comment about interbreeding. There have been times in history where it was encouraged for first cousins to marry because to consolidate the wealth of both families and make them even more powerful. And so it was politically and economically promoted Yet at other times in history, it was not. So it depends on, which era you happen to be looking at as such. But today we know in Iceland, I'd say that is a classic example of interbreeding where the people have interbred with each other. And I gather there are many, many medical problems and medical issues. And so, yeah, it better not to marry your first cousin or maybe even your second cousin. So again, what was it like in ancient times? Did they encourage first cousins to marry or discourage them? I don't remember reading anything about it. Would you remember, Rabbi?
I don't remember anything being, I don't think it was discouraged or encouraged. I don't think they were aware of genetics.
No, it's not. But again, if you have successive generations of defectives of one way or another, maybe the light bulb goes on and people say, maybe this isn't good. At some point they're aware of it.
This is very irrelevant. I'll say it fast.
Minya first, and then Natalie.
Wasn't there a time in history when the monarchs of England, Germany, Russia were all related to each other because you could even tell because they looked alike.
Yeah.
So that was interbreeding, as you're mentioning. I don't know.
What had hemophilia as a result.
The Russian one, the Russian prince did. So we know for sure that we had those countries for a long time connected through cousins, I guess you would say.
Okay, Natalie, and then
all I was going to say
Evelyn
to
read.
Richard was there were 13 grandchildren that were born on my mother's side, and it never showed up again. And then they had successive children, and it never happened again. So
That was called luck.
Yeah.
we were all worried.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, things can happen and some things don't happen. Okay, Evelyn, you can keep going.
Okay, at the bottom of page 122, but parental criticism can also undermine confidence or mislead children about their real talents. Perhaps instead of being helpful, Jacob's last words to his sons were harmful. How were they to feel about themselves when their father on his deathbed characterized them with such negative descriptions? Not all commentaries, however, agree that improving character was the reason for Jacob's critical evaluation of existence. Don Isaac Abravanel offered a different answer. It is one of the most accepted by Jewish interpreters. Abravanel's theory is that when it came time for Jacob to die, he decided to pass on the leadership or rule of his family to the son who was most qualified. He struggled with his decision because he realized that the future of the Jewish people depended upon his choice. For that reason, he assessed carefully the strengths and weaknesses of each son. When he reached his conclusion about who was the most qualified leader, he then gathered his sons together and announced it to them. Because he wanted them to appreciate his conclusions, he honestly shared his evaluation with them. Jacob wanted each of them to understand why he had disqualified him for leadership of the Jewish people.
All right, so he shared his data with them, the criteria and the evaluations, the raw material. Unlike the president of Harvard, who, when the researchers asked her for the data on which she had written an article, she refused to share it. So Jacob is trying to be transparent, and he's saying, this is my conclusion, and this is the basis upon which I came to that conclusion. Okay, Evelyn.
Whether or not Abravanel's view of what motivated Jacob is correct, his discussion of what qualifies or disqualifies someone for leadership is very valuable. The following summary presents what Abravanel believes Jacob was saying about his sons and the important qualities he took into consideration when he thought about each of them. Jacob's sons and leadership, qualities for leadership for Judah, trusted and accepted by his brothers, brave and successful in battle, steady, thoughtful, and dependable, clear about his goals and determined to fulfill them. Qualities that disqualified for leadership. Reuben, unstable as water. Simeon and Levi, use of violence and force. Zebulun, always looking for profit.
He's
Issachar,
a capitalist. What's wrong with that? He would be
Uh,
great on Wall Street.
he has a place in society, but not as a leader. Issachar, use of others to fight his battles. Dan, snipes at others behind their backs. Gad, weakly gives in to his opponents. Asher and Naphtali, serves others but do not command respect. Joseph, hated and distrusted by his brothers. And Benjamin lacks balance of judgment and concern for others.
What a
Abravanel,
group. What a group. All right, comments, Bernie, Steve, Richard.
yeah, I think in the case of Benjamin as being the youngest, he lacked balance of judgment because he was younger and hadn't had life's experiences.
Okay, Bernie.
I still think that he's remembering stuff from a long time ago. And he really has to scrape the bottom of the barrel to come up with some of these faults.
So, but if he has a little bit of dementia and he remembers only things that happened 30 years before, what do?
You say, thank you, Pop, and go on with your life.
But he's going to pick a successor, kind of like, when Isaac picked Jacob. I think, isn't Jacob kind of recreating that? He wants to pass the birth rate on, and he's going to pass it on to who he wants to, not necessarily the best one. Marcia,
Who is the eldest of this group?
can anyone answer that?
Jude,
I'll be right
Reuben.
back.
Reuben,
Reuben?
Reuben.
Reuben, okay, it seems unanimous, okay. So he wasn't, I thought that they picked the oldest one, that's the firstborn, et cetera, and all that stuff.
Well, this is what's puzzling about the whole thing. It was so important in Jacob and Esau's time. It was so important for Isaac and Ishmael. And it was so important later on for Moses and Aaron's kids who complained that they weren't picked to be the leaders.
So where did this come from? I mean, he's not, Reuben is the eldest and Judah gets chosen?
Well, that just, to me, just adds to my hypothesis that Jacob didn't really know what he was doing.
Okay.
Because
Anybody
primogeniture
want a
was,
counter argument and say Jacob did know what he was doing? Natalie?
It doesn't matter. It's what he did, and that's how it's written.
Richard has a hand up.
Okay, Richard?
I have a question. Let's go back a few chapters. When Joseph when the brothers were thinking of killing Joseph, and then they finally put him in that pit and in slavery. What was Judah's role? I don't remember now. But was he someone who was very worried about Jacob, about Joseph, and Joseph dying?
Anybody? Marcia?
One of
No,
them,
I don't know. I
one of
thought
them,
it
I somewhere remember one of them was sort of concerned about that.
I thought that they all were kind
Want
of.
to check your Tanakhs and see what the story was?
Yeah, I was going to. I thought it was kind of,
Let's see.
like Leah.
Unanimous. I don't think it was.
What chapter and verse are we in here? Does anybody know?
It would be, well, it would be in Genesis, probably 37
I
to
know it's Genesis, okay, so.
34 to, or
Go
something.
up.
Share.
Joseph said to his people, oh, here we go, 49, Genesis 49.
Yeah,
1.
page 92.
Yeah, but going back to, yeah, to where they threw him in the pit, that one we're looking at, okay.
It's chapter 38, no?
38, okay.
7:31.
Oh, this is not it.
Oh,
Okay.
it's Reuben.
It,
Reuben suggests that they throw Joseph into a pit rather than kill him.
Yeah, Reuben, yeah, I see that. Reuben was
That's
the
Joseph.
instigator,
So
yeah.
it's Reuben who is the one who
What
is,
chapter and verse is that?
it's what, page 92.
It's,
In the
doesn't
book.
matter what page it is. It's 3729, somewhere around there.
Yeah, but if you go to our
Five.
book, the commentary, it's on page 92, on the second half of page
In
92.
Fields, you mean?
In Fields, yeah, and it says, later, Jacob sends Joseph out to bring him a report on how the brothers are caring for him, their herd. When his brothers see him coming, they plot to kill him. Reuben suggests that they throw Joseph in a pit rather than kill him, hoping
Yes.
that afterwards he might rescue Joseph. So Reuben, who is the oldest, is the one who's most, has the best conscience about this.
But the question was about Judah. What did Judah do?
Yeah,
yeah, but
In the next paragraph on that whole episode there on 93, Judah did not act right with Tamar.
right, right,
Yeah, he got Tamar pregnant and then he was going to have her murdered.
right.
So he's
He was
not
going to have her,
best
let me repeat, he was going to have her murdered.
murdered.
Murdered. And then when he found that it was his child, then he decided not to murder her, but he almost murdered her just to get rid of her.
Right.
This sounds like a mafia family, not like a bunch of, the spiritual ancestors. Natalie is right. I'm giving up my job as a rabbi and I'm becoming a corporate lawyer.
Yeah, this is just a
Well,
bunch
if
of
we get
Bedouin.
rid of Jacob, there'll be a vacancy. Maybe you can fill it.
No, this is just a bunch of
Thank you,
Bedouins from the Middle
Natalie.
East.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you. That, I need a job desperately.
Oh, so wait, I found something. In Genesis 26. Then Judah said to his brothers, what do I gain by killing our brother and covering up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and let us not do away with him ourselves. So he saved Joseph at that moment from being killed
Oh,
right there
who
in the pit.
says this?
Judah.
Judah.
This is in chapter
30,
26.
37, chapter 20, not 7, verse 26.
Oh, chapter 37.
37, 26, yes.
yeah.
So Judah was the one that helped him get out of the pit, but that doesn't qualify him necessarily to be king, I don't know.
Oh, yes, okay. So Judah supports Reuven. And so is this really what he thought, or is he trying just to convince his brothers not to kill him when he says, chapter 37, verse 26, Judah said to his brothers, what do we gain by killing our brother and covering up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, but do not do away with him ourselves. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh. His brothers agreed. So is Judah trying to save his brother, or does Judah just want to profit and let's not kill him, let's
That's
make
true,
money
they
off?
got money for him, right? 20
Well,
pieces of
but it's
silver.
possible that Judah is just saying that because he's trying desperately to save his brother, but he knows if he just says, leave my brother alone, the other brothers might kill him.
Maybe.
Hmm.
But we have no way of knowing it. Evelyn's word, this is all speculation.
And of course,
But even if we were there and even if we heard him say it, would we really know what his motivation was? People have motivations inside the, who knows what evil looms in the hearts of men? Who said that?
Shadow does.
Okay, Evelyn, you want to keep reading?
Right. Abravanel's, the middle of the right column on 123. Abravanel's emphasis here is upon the important qualities that define leadership. Jacob, he argues, did not speak to his sons in order to hurt their feelings or to cause bitterness between them. His purpose was to clarify for them why Judah, above them all, qualified as the leader of the tribe that would produce King David and future rulers of Israel. What makes a leader? Rabbi Mendel of Kotz said, no fanatic can be a leader of the people of Israel. A gentle leader here on earth will also be a leader in the world to come. That was from Rabbi Eliezer ben Pedot. A leader must always show respect for the community. That's from Rabbi Nachman ben Jacob. God weeps over a community leader who is domineering, from the Haggadah. Jacob's last words to his sons were neither a blessing nor a promise for a peaceful future. Instead, Jacob presented them with a blunt and honest evaluation of their behavior and personality. Our interpreters believe that his purpose was to provide his sons with some critical insights into themselves and their motivations. In doing so, Jacob also created some valuable standards for defining the difference between good and bad leadership qualities.
All right. I think Harvey Fields is trying a little too hard here to say that Jacob is creating valuable standards for defining the difference between good and bad leadership suggests that Jacob knew the standards of good and bad leadership, and nobody here has really defended Jacob. Minya, are you prepared to defend Jacob? No, even Minya, who loves defending the underdog, she doesn't want to take on Jacob as a client. Nobody thinks he did a good job. Nobody thinks he really tried very hard. Nobody thinks his character was nice and stable.
The only thing I could say positively about him is that maybe people talk that way then. You know, maybe that was the manner of speech at that point. I don't know. You know, the
But
tough
good
talk.
judgment is good judgment. All right, Minya.
On the very last page of this section, there are questions for study and discussion. And the last
Right.
one is, can you think of an example when, for the sake of family unity and peace, it would be better to lie? So,
right.
are we defending Jacob because he's doing this? Is he doing it for the sake of family unity and peace? He's really turning the sons against each other, it would seem.
Which is what he's been doing his whole life.
Right. So would it be better for him to lie so that on his deathbed, he feels that what he did was to keep the family together?
Yes, I think most of us feel that he should have lied. Then he should have called in his therapist and said, I'm dying. This is our last session. I'm going to tell you how much I hate my children and why. And the therapist could have listened to it all, and that would be it. Or he could have called in his rabbi, but not tell the kids directly. Okay? Go ahead, Minya.
No, that was all I was saying, that it made me, when I looked ahead, that made me wonder whether he was doing it because he thought by telling everybody the truth that he would keep the family together. But he didn't do it because he didn't have peace.
But I
Hmm.
think,
That's right.
sorry, I think if that question is referring to the Perek Gimel, are we permitted to lie in the cause of peace? Although that, it still reflects the same issue, doesn't it?
Hmm.
There's a lot of lying going on if you scan that whole thing, in different places,
Well,
in the Jacob story.
but that's, people lie.
We have that in our own society,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're leaders or not. We sit and we listen to them speaking, and then we find out that this is not correct. These are lies, and how
Utter
how-
lies that need to be fact checked, and then there's a lot
Absolutely.
white lies. Is that what we call them? When they're just
Mhm.
for the sake of peace, when we're talking to people, and it's more of emotional connections and things that you might say, you would say to a child, you've got a forceful personality. And you could also say, you're a little brat, which way is nicer for you to be accepted to the kid,
Um, it's not easy.
No.
All right, Richard?
My big mouth, I have no comment.
Okay.
No, we
Yes.
read stories and we tend to give them the psychoanalytical approach that we give in our society. And is it fair to put our values on what happened then? It was such a radically different lifestyle, culture, where the patriarch was the absolute ruler of his tribe, his family, whatever. And so, we try and analyze, but when someone is an absolute dictator, such, some of these rules just don't apply because their way of thinking is so radically different from the way we tend to think as behavior that is normal for today may have been absolutely anathema in those days, or vice versa. The behavior of people in those days, we would be horrified. They were living in our society today. So our criticism, I said, is all speculative. And okay, it's an interesting discussion, but is it valid? Who knows? Marcia?
Marcia?
But then again, I agree with you, pretty much. But then again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And still the attitudes and relationships between parents and children, and maybe you speak differently or this or that, but it doesn't always change. He's still, I mean, the root of it is still there. The parents alienated from the child, we see it now. Natalie said the same thing I did, this disconnect that you're seeing. I don't know if it's from our age as parents to our next generation down from us. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what happens next generation up with our kids and their kids. I see it there too, actually. So, but I think things don't change that much. Or maybe the wording changes a little bit, but still problematical. I remember I was out raking leaves, and my neighbor and we each had one kid left at home, teenager. And we decided we were going to join forces. Our husbands were not available. We had to get these leaves raked. And I said to my neighbor, you tell your kid my kid what to do, and I'll tell your kid, because they're not going to listen to us. And it worked, So we were bossing around our neighbors' kids. We got the yard done. And but the children just turn off their own parents oftentimes, and they're not going to listen, and that goes on no matter how nicely you say it, even. I don't think things change that much.
Then
So
move.
Jake's frustration with his children would not be that different from today.
Yeah, the words may come out different and the way he said it and such, but the emotional attitudes that people have still are pretty much the same.
In other words, human behavior hasn't changed in 5,000 years.
Yes.
Wow. Well, it seems sad though that he comes to the end of his life and all he has to do is say nasty things. He's overcome with bitterness, it would appear. He's dying in the wrong place. He doesn't want to be in Egypt. He can't just move where he wants. He can't bring back the wife he loved. He probably blames his mother for creating a lot of the problems, but he doesn't say that.
Sure, why not?
And I don't want to get Bernie on a rant about Rebecca, but she's probably at fault for a lot of it, but also his father. So things that happen to a child because of his parents, he passes on to his children. In this case, very much so.
Mhm.
His parents screwed him up. His parents fought with each other. They used him to fight. And the results, he didn't replicate exactly what happened, but he created his own mess.
Right.
All right, so one dysfunctional family leads to the next generation being dysfunctional also. Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's dysfunctional in a different way, but it's dysfunctional.
Is
Very
this,
dysfunctional. And it's dysfunctional because of what happened to him. The dysfunction passes on even if the specific things don't replicate exactly. Yes, Richard.
oh, this means that we Jews, if to put two Jews in a room, they get four opinions. Is this correct?
Minimally, yeah.
Yeah, because we have to blame Isaac for this and his wife. That's who we're blaming. Not Abraham, but Isaac.
Why Isaac?
Claus.
Just sounds better that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, if your
Or
father
maybe Jay, or maybe
top of a
Jacob.
mountain,
Yeah,
it
it's
was
hard to say.
off, with Isaac, his father was gonna kill him easily.
Yeah.
Like, I'll screw your head up.
And he was a
Any
young
final
man.
comments?
It happened.
Bernie, this would not have happened in Kansas City, right, Steve?
No, absolutely not.
People there behave more properly. It also
Was the
would not have
Midwest-
had.
That was the Midwest way.
All right, Bernie, final comment.
I have a question. It's a little off topic, but I see that the first line of Perek Gimel says that Jacob was buried in Hebron. And it brings a question. Rachel was not buried in Hebron, and she was his favorite wife. Why did either she not get buried in the cave with the ancestors, or he buried with her?
Well, she was traveling when she died on the road.
But Jacob was in Egypt, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
She was only 5 miles from Hebron.
I don't know, but it was not deliberate. It was what happened because that's just what happened.
That's an answer.
That's not a good historical answer.
No.
Marcia, I have a PhD in history. I'm relying on that to be accurate. No, I don't know, Bernie.
I'm gonna look it up after
But it
class.
wasn't deliberate. Certainly, if Jacob could have been buried next to his beloved wife, presumably he would have done so. I don't know why. But it's symbolic that he's not getting what he wants, even in death.
Hmm.
I mean, Rachel very much represents the wife that he could never really have.
Okay, I said something on Google. It says
Okay.
Rachel lost being buried next to Jacob because of her dealing with Leah. but she thereby merited having her son receive the birthright. Why didn't Jacob bury Rachel in the cave? Jacob foresaw that following the destruction of the first temple, the Jews would be exiled to Babylon. They would cry out as they passed her grave and be comforted by her. She was buried by the roadside and not in the cave of Machpelah with the other etc. That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's saying that when the Babylonians exiled the Jews in the first exile, they made them go on the highway, and Rachel's tomb was right on the highway, so it comforted them.
Yep.
All right, it doesn't make much
This tomb
sense.
was about 1,000 years later.
Yeah.
I'm sure they could have probably didn't even know where the tomb was by that time. 1,000 years, that's a long time.
You can make up a lot of history in that time.
Absolutely.
Yes, you can.
What is the OU Torah?
The OU Torah is, I guess, the Orthodox Union
Union.
Oh, okay.
a Torah commentary or something.
All right. So then Rachel wasn't buried, they say. Rachel wasn't buried in the cave of Machpelah because she did not need to be there, whereas Leah needed to be there. I guess she was the first wife. And Rachel, in death as she did in life, gave way for her sister.
Gave way. So Rachel was a
Didn't have a
little too
choice.
accommodating,
Yeah.
but
It's an act
Leah
of
still didn't.
self-sacrifice.
Everybody is frustrated. Even after death, they're frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
But all of this is leading to the bottom line is the Israelites are going to get to Egypt. Joseph is going to become prime minister. Things are going to be good until they're not. And then that sets up the most important part of Jewish theology, which is God bringing the children of Israel out of slavery, out of Egypt into the Holy Land. And then the story stops being about a family and starts being about a people or a nation.
Mhm.
Okay, over to you, Steve. Any announcement?
Yes, sir. Next week we start in Exodus.
All right.
We talk about Pharaoh's war against the Jews, and should be quite interesting to hear about what we have to say about that. Any new announcements, Rabbi, as far as classes for next year?
There's no class in January. February, we're starting beginning Hebrew.
Oh.
Mary Ann is teaching, and I'm doing course on two of the prophets, Jeremiah and Isaiah. You know Jeremiah from the song He Was a Bullfrog,
Mhm.
Yes.
but you probably don't know much about Isaiah.
Three Dog Night. And let's see, I don't know if what else is going on until March, which is the golf outing. We got quite a few things going on. Check your bulletin. Also too, Lori, our publicist, is going to be asking some of us to maybe do a tribunal as to why we like Torah study and how to encourage others to participate. So if we can't contact you, please consider thinking about your opinions as far as what Torah study means to you. Let us conclude then with the final blessing, and then we could go on with our rest of the day. Together, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chaye olam nata b'tokenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Blessed is Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us a teaching of truth, implanting within us eternal life. Blessed is Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen. All right, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, everybody.
And we'll see you guys next year.
Next year.
Next year,
Yep,
Yep.
if not sooner.
have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Good week.